the most important thing that I have come to the conclusion we can do that just hits on all these topics is to source at a minimum our meat, eggs, and dairy as local as possible. We do that, and it is such a needle mover for all of this that we're discussing. Well, I hope everybody's full. That was a good little lunch. So, Dennis and I have known each other for years now, and just the mission and passion behind what he wants to see, home for him come to life, and the positivity and bring things together. It's been really cool to see his passion over the years and how he's continued on. So, about me. In 2019, I was sitting on the couch, and he came up and he said, "Dad, my pee's orange." And I said, "What?" So I went in there, looked in the toilet, and it was pink. So he was 5 at the time, it was pink, it was blood. So he was peeing blood. So fast forward a little bit, we're at Children's, and he is diagnosed with stage 4 kidney cancer. So that led us off into what do we do, right? How do we overcome this? How do we prevent it as we go through? How do we make sure it doesn't come back? So within 8 months, he went from stage 4 to cancer-free. And so that was a little over 4 years ago. And what we've done since then is continue to learn, right? All right, y'all go sit down. So yeah, definitely my motivation to continue to learn and make sure that we thrive and we able to use our journey to help others, right? To serve. Like I feel like that's why God allows us to go through these difficulties, is to learn and to be able to take and facilitate solutions. So with that, I have me and McGee Market with my mom. It's a family business, and we've been doing that for a while, and that's a huge part of what we do. But the other aspect of it is the education, the learning. So that's what the Sowing Prosperity, you can see the little logo down there, is. So I have experts from across all kinds of different fields. So these are doctors, PhDs, farmers, cancer survivors, all on and on and on. So somebody that you may be familiar with would be like Sally Fallon Morrell. So she's the president of the Weston A. Price Foundation. All kinds. It's been really, really cool who all we've been able to access. And so with that, started trying to put together a theme. What is this? So early on, I read the China Study. And so for anybody that's in the alternative health, China Study is a book that pops up a whole lot. And what that did was it terrified me of meat, right? I thought, man, meat causes all these problems. It's all laid out right here in the China Study. It has to be accurate. And then started looking into the work on blue zones and looking into vegan and paleo and keto and on, right? Like whatever the flavor of the month is. So as I'm going through this, I'm asking the oncologist, what do we do? What do I feed my child? How do we overcome cancer? Well, it doesn't matter. That's what I was told, right? This is the narrative. It doesn't matter what you eat. Just here, we're going to give you chemo and then hand you a Coke. We're going to do radiation and here's a candy bar. We're going to stay because we have we're a flare-up of some sort of an infection. So here you go. Here's ice cream. And so it's just absolutely insanity to me. And so continue to dive in. How do we learn and figure out, is this accurate? Is it not accurate? And really just opened my eyes to diet early on. And as a foundation, what is the appropriate way to eat? And so questions, more answers, more experts, go through. A lot of things were coming up on the efficacy of cancer treatment, so chemo, in a ketogenic state. So a lot of positives. So maybe this is the answer. And so as we're going into that, I'll bring in PhDs that do specialties. David Harper is one of them. We're looking at ketosis and cancer. And people are having positives. So why are we having positives? And go through that. And the doctors that are at Arkansas Children's, which, I give them a lot of credit. I'm not bashing them. But they're acting like this doesn't matter. So he's doing great. And other babies are dying. So, and I'm laying this out in a way that I'm telling you, like, this was a journey, a very emotional up and down journey that we went through and didn't fall into a paradigm, this is the only way. As we go into Walter Longo's work around longevity, he starts throwing in the microbiome. Like, what's a microbiome, right? Like, what does this have? So then start looking at more studies, and especially immunotherapies. If certain bacteria are in your gut, they work. If they're not, they don't. So, wow, that's a whole other layer to this outside of food. And so continue on going down. And I have a friend that was in Desert Storm, and every time he ate, he was bleeding, going to the bathroom bleeding. And he's like, man, I got to figure this out. What do we do? And he said, what do you think about carnivore? I was like, well, you're going to die if you try to do carnivore. You just eat meat. That's crazy. And he's like, I got to try something. So I read the China study, right? I knew that was right. So John comes back and he says, the bleeding stopped. About 2 weeks in carnivore and bleeding stopped. I'm like, what? This makes no sense. And it's based off of what we know, right? This alternative space is telling us that a vegan diet is the only solution for health. So how is carnivore going to work for you? So John continues on. The bleeding stops. He's feeling better than he ever has. And so another friend, Lisa Fisher, says, hey, I've done 2 weeks of carnivore and I feel great. I'm just like, this is wild. So I did an experiment. I wanted to say a 2-week experiment on myself. It was the best I ever felt. So it started making me question the diet narrative too, right? Because this sounds crazy, right? I read the China study. I knew meat caused cancer and heart disease and all these things. But what it became evident to me based on, I thought the doctors were wrong, right, in their recommendations of diet. I thought that was just craziness. The alternative health space missing something, right? If carnivore is working for this many people, at least in the short term, we're missing something. And so we kept going on and getting some of the absolute world experts around minerals and the microbiome, and started seeing that there's some flaws in diet, because diet seemed to have a positive whether you went vegan short-term, carnivore short-term, keto short-term, just got off standard American diet short-term, all kinds of positives. So what's really going on there? And what I found is we're missing the most important nuance of all of it, is that we live on a planet with cycles. We live in a planet with seasons. We have a food system that completely neglects that aspect. We centralize it to control it, to scale it, to have it spread out everywhere. So what I have now come to, guys, I'm many years into this, and I put out 2 podcasts a week. So world experts on the podcast twice a week at a minimum, where we're putting this out. What I have come to is the appropriate human diet, right, is local, it's seasonal, and it's natural. So let me give you the context of that. So here in Hot Springs, that's going to look a lot different than it is in northern Michigan, right? Because it's a different season, it's a different climate, it's a different geography. So we might be having a lot more fish. Maybe we're close to the Great Lakes. We would have a much more harsh winter, right? And so when we look at the seasons and say a winter, carnivore is absolutely a winter diet in a temperate climate. This is why we look at Eskimos, the Inuits. They are extremely carnivore heavy. Well, where are they located, right? So the season matters. The local is so important because it dictates what is going to be available. We don't have pineapples in Arkansas in December, right? They don't grow.
The bromelain is really good for you.
There you go. These enzymes are great. But when you take into account that the way that our ancestors, and whether you believe evolution or God, I personally believe creation, and this takes into account how did we live 2,000-3,000 years ago? Well, there was a migratory aspect. There was a local and seasonal aspect also. The natural means a whole lot. So when we look at a Reese's cup compared to a ribeye, compared to a natural native apple, those are different things, right? So we don't always have apples, and that's why this meal mattered so much. And the reason that I did the salad recipe the way we did is greens are available right now. The apples, they're available right now. Right? The pecans, they're available right now. That's why was set up the way it was, because that's an example of local, seasonal, and natural. Those aren't ingredients, right? That pecans ingredient was pecan. the lettuce ingredient was lettuce. You can recognize each piece. So when in that context, depending on if it's January, July, or October, our diets are going to look a little bit different if we're sourcing things locally. So keto has a place. Carnivore has a place. And we have the sun that really dictates and guides that. All right? We look right out of the gate in Genesis. Let there be light. It's very, very important to me to follow those kind of the biblical principles that are there that lay out the way that the cycles of nature work. With all that said, that's really the only way that I see long-term health achieved, right? People can have great success on a keto, on carnivore. I mean, we even see not to make it a debate on different diet styles, but you see the positive because our food's absolute garbage. Our food is absolutely poisoning us. And so, like for my kids, when we go to the store, it's right there, right? Like I own a grocery store. This is where we source. So we eat a very meat-based diet. We do very seasonal in what type of sides that we have, and it works. So with the podcast, with being very vocal in creating the awareness around health and our journey, I have so many people that come to me for advice. And I'm a country boy from Atkins, Arkansas, on the side of the road selling tomatoes, right? But over the years, been able to help so many people. So I heard earlier that we've got Mr. Taylor with type 2 diabetes, type 1 diabetic. We've got all kinds of metabolic diseases that can be autoimmune in your case, and that have been completely, if not reversed, mitigated and managed so well. And it's been so rewarding to be able to take my son's struggles, his journey, and be able to serve other people. So that's diet in a nutshell. We've overcomplicated it, right? And so when we can go to John and Betty and say, hey, they got raw milk, they've got sourdough bread, they've got whatever garden veggies are available. We have orchard opportunities. That seasonal aspect is where we've got to be able to support, because the reason that it's so hard and the reason that it's so expensive is we don't have the supply. We don't have the supply. On one hand, it's extremely difficult. It's hard work. And so we don't have the supply and we don't have the demand. So in this talk, what I really hope that y'all get from it is that prosperity is local. And the first part of prosperity is health. It is personal prosperity. A sick person only wants one thing, right? The health, that time of being able to thrive. So longevity in this context is more about health span, the ability to thrive, to be able to live a fulfilling life, not be like Dennis was talking about in a nursing home, right, in a bed and living to 100. That's not what we're going for. We want to be vibrant and have a quality of life. So if we can support our farmers, build these prosperity zones, these prosperity hubs of consumers, of farmers, of markets, of restaurants that are doing it, and we build out these local hubs, the individual health improves, our local economies improve. It was really sad thinking about 20 years ago, downtown Hot Springs was dead. Only had one bathhouse going. It's kind of hard to believe right now. Like what I saw yesterday with Halloween was mass chaos. There were people everywhere. And so that type of focus on local, on bringing people together and having this service mindset, man, that to me is such a beautiful way of providing a solution that all ships rise with that tide. So I could go on and on, but I really, really prefer to have that dialogue and go back, because everybody cares about something a little bit different, right? Whatever y'all have, that's what I want to follow up on. And then I'm going to introduce John and let him tell you a little bit about the farm. Just we've got so many good people. I think that we're so tired as a society of being sick that we are more open to this conversation. I've been having this conversation for a long time, and people didn't care. But I think now it's starting to become more and more evident that something ain't right. Everybody's really sick, or at least fatigued, tired. Mental issues they're off the charts. And there's a lot that goes into it, and it's not just diet, but this is that gateway drug, for lack of a better term, to have the conversation on real solutions. So with that, y'all have any sort of questions or comments that we can just continue?
Your kids, do you see?
Yeah, so like I'm full-blown crazy, right? So like I homeschool them, right? Like I homeschool them. That's why they're here and they're back there and you'll notice they're not on a device. They got notebooks, right? Like, so this is so important. That's what I'm talking about on that gateway. We can have the conversation and get that snowball rolling with the food piece, because you do start feeling a lot better, right? You have more energy, and then you can go exercise. You can spend more time at the spa. You do more things, and then it builds and it compounds, and it can open up, that other conversation. But absolutely, like the comparison of what I say, and I have 4. I got 2 more younger than them. It's night and day. It's night and day. So one of the most important things that y'all can do as a group that is much more aware, at least you're showing it, right? You're here, to get more involvement, is that y'all have families and friends and coworkers, right? We can be a light. And that's what I really want to highlight with the journey. This isn't about coming in and telling other people they're wrong and what they should do. It's about overcoming the darkness that we're all plagued with. And the only way we overcome darkness is with light. And so you have the opportunity of all being lights in this world. And so doing little things like having a family get a cow, right? Like buying a whole beef and then splitting it. Because, that could be a substantial commitment financially. But if a group, right, 2 or 3 coworkers go together and get a cow, there we go.
Grind my own meat. I don't trust the mystery meat in the grind.
Well, you shouldn't grind. You shouldn't. And so let me go into that, because the food system is a big deal. We have 4 corporations that own 80% of the beef supply. 4 corporations in the United States own 80%, control 80% of the beef supply. And so what they do is they have processing facilities at which they will run 10,000 head through, right? And it's conveyor, just like how Henry Ford set up the Ford factories to just do one piece at a time. That's what they do. They make one cut, goes down the line, one cut down the line, and they're throwing trimmings into these barrels, and then it goes into a grind. And so in the DNA test, we're seeing everywhere from 200 to over 1,000 different DNAs in a pound of ground. Now think about that. And so to throw this back in, and now when you go into processed meats like bolognas and hot dogs and stuff like that, it's even worse, right? It's off the charts. So when we know the farmer, we know that we just bought one cow, right? That's completely different, right? That's a completely different conversation. And so let me tie this in another way. Recently, so we've got a huge following with me and McGee Market, especially Facebook. I work with local farmers. That's my goal. I want to be the marketing and retail customer service piece of the food system, where we service our farmers and the customers, the consumers, to where they get it. They get what they want. They have a full understanding. So we were selling raw milk, okay? Raw milk. That's a big controversial thing, which is mind-blowing. But it is. And so we were selling it for pet consumption. That's the loophole, right? You can buy raw milk. If you want to take it home and do whatever you want, it's your own business, right? So you have to sell it as pet food. Well, somebody turned us into the health department, and this actually happens. It has happened multiple times over the years, but they said, they were just so concerned that we were making everybody sick, okay? So made a post, it blew up, and so we've been on a little bit of a series where I'm bringing in Mark McAfee. Mark owns Raw Farms, so Raw Farms is huge, all right? Like Mark's in California, but he has his products in 40 different states, all right? And so Mark has also came in and did what's called the Raw Milk Institute, and this is a nonprofit where they teach farmers how to do safe practices. They help educate. They help pass legislation that makes sense, because none of it does around raw milk at all. And when you break this down, raw milk is unbelievably safe, right? Like, you have healthy cows, you have good sanitation and storage. It's unbelievably safe, right? Now, the problem was back early on when we had sick cows near cities that were trying to, goes back to the cow analogy of in-the-ground beef. When you have 1,000 different cows that you're mixing into a vat and you're not having it cold, it's not sanitized, they're sick cows, and then you're trying to then bottle that up and give it to people, you're going to make sick. You're going to make people sick, right? And so followed up with different doctors and different specialists on this, listen, we only drink raw milk, and we're going to continue to do what we do. That cannot be controlled, right? So having 50, 60, 70 John and Betty's in Arkansas with small dairies that provide for our community is not controllable. That's what it really comes down to, okay? And the same thing with meat happens, okay? So having arbiters or little small butcher shops, more small processing facilities, 50, 60, 70 across the state, it's not controllable, right? But when we centralize it and we let Tyson dictate what happens with meat, and they can afford to do this cost of compliance, right? So some examples are like $5,000 thermometers that's required. Now why does that have anything to do with public safety? It doesn't. It's cost of compliance. Tyson can do it, the small guys can't. Touchless sinks, right? $2,000 touchless faucet is being mandated where Tyson can comply, but the small guys can't. So that's why we're losing our small processors as well. And it's scaling. So this decentralized aspect is so important, and it only happens with local. It only happens with local. So if we go to Kroger and buy all our meat that came from, we don't know, right? We don't know where the animal came from. You can bring it in from South America, have it processed here, and it can be called American beef. There's just no transparency, whereas you can go to John and get that one head that we're talking about, splitting it between our coworkers. I know where he lives. I know the animal that he vouched for. He ain't going to go hide in his private jet and go to Cancun, right? It is integrity. And the free market's going to dictate. If we have a small dairy that sells their milk, and this was actually a real story, sells their milk and there's bugs in it, we're not going to buy anything from them, right? We're like, first of all, I don't want your milk. It's got bugs in it, and you're not going to buy from them. That's going to drive them out of the market because they're going to have no support. Nobody wants that. But if we have these standards and accountability, they can thrive. And then we thrive because we're getting real quality food. So, like, the most important thing that I have come to the conclusion we can do that just hits on all these topics is to source at a minimum our meat, eggs, and dairy as local as possible. We do that, and it is such a needle mover for all of this that we're discussing.
Doing one thing well, then do another thing well, and then do another thing, and it builds. And it is only really sustainable long term. And again, this is where I'm going to lead into my other notes about longevity is local. And I want to use the LOCAL, local. And the L starts with the law of the farm. Okay? Logan, other folks we know about growing things, and it is the law of the farm. I cannot stand when you see these people talk about, the biohack to shortcut this. farmers don't have no shortcuts. I mean, you got to plant the seed, you got to go through the season, you grow it, you harvested it. And I suggest to you that any short-term gains you might have through some, whatever you want to call it, is not the same thing as really abiding by the law of the farm, okay? So it is critical to understand, and again, that's the part that I keep wanting to emphasize, and we're going to talk another minute about my personal pyramid. Building some structure around your health that is permanent. That doesn't mean that it can't be flexible, but you really want to think about, and again, I talk about my episode, but when you're laying in an ambulance, going to the hospital, you can't move your arm, and 2 days ago you were out there in the field, I mean, life changes. We always hear this, it changes, Yes. But the point of it is that you can recover, you can get through it, but you got to have, or at least I do. Now, my friend Paul, and his great story, but he says he's just militant. He was just that type of personality. He could do it on his own. But anyway, I want to spend about 15, 20 minutes and go through local as a part of longevity. And we'll weave a couple things in. And in the L part, besides just the law of the farm, I also want to talk about love, okay? And that is the emphasis and the prelude into social relationships. I don't like to wave around books too often, but there's two here. Harvard has done the longest longitudinal study, which is almost now 80 years. They started in 1939, and they were looking at individual people, and they followed them through their life, and now they're following their kids. And what they found through obviously just mountains and mountains of data, that social relationships is the greatest indication, according to them, for health and longevity. Okay? We believe it's diet too, but it's so critical. And you think about, I don't want to stand here and wave and quoting a bunch of things, but really, we are social. We are human. When you have a problem, you have an issue, you need your network of friends. That's why, again, the networking, the online communities, whatever you can do is great, but there's nothing better than, the true friendship. I mean, it's biblical. The other thing, how many of you heard, talking about, again, something that's beneficial, how many have read or know about the 5 love languages? Okay. Doesn't mean that your significant other, spouse, lover, whatever, has to have the same love language, but it's critical to, I believe it's critical to know. Trust me, I'm divorced, so I would have liked to know that. The 5 love languages, according to, and listen, this is, incidentally, Gary Chapman, who wrote it, is the associate pastor at the Calvary Baptist Church in Winston-Salem. When I used to live in Winston-Salem, I knew of him and knew people there. 13 million copies sold, 13 million worldwide. And so it's very much, again, biblical. The 5 love languages, words of affirmation. You look nice today, you did great. Acts of service. Okay, can I help you do the dishes? Will you help me? Number 2. Number 3, receiving gifts. That was my last girlfriend. She didn't care. Give me something. Quality time, which is mine. And then 5, physical touch. I bring this up because in the significance of our relationship, even if it's friendship, I think that there are some elements you can understand about how we are different, how we're the same, what makes us, as they say, tick. So very easy, highly recommend it. If you take relationships seriously, which I know we do, but I mean really, it's critical to understand, and I got to take the quote from Stephen Covey, who said, it's first to understand and then be understood. We do want to be understood. The last L, I would say, is the hardest for most people, and that's listening. In relationships, I mean, people like this. They're talking, you're talking. They're not listening, and all they're waiting for you to do is stop, and then they're going to spew out right on you. They're not taking anything in. So L for listening as well, okay? The O, I was going to make up cards, but I didn't. The O is two things. Number one, certainly we talked about obesity, we talked about inflammation, and I had one other thing here, but I get this out of the New York Times too. Obesity costs $173 billion to the healthcare industry, but my other thing was card. Again, obesity and then chronic smoking can take 14 years off your life. I don't think very many people smoke anymore. But the other part of O, if I say exercise, everybody like, what do I do? So I put O for yoga, meaning flexibility. I have tried Tai Chi once. I believe all those Chinese guys have got it going on. But particularly, I mean, do you find your balance not what it used to be? I hate it. I mean, but it's important. And I don't think, the millions of those guys across the pond doing Tai Chi every day, there's got to be something to it. So you can take that with a grain of salt. But anyway. The C is obviously for calories. Logan's going to talk all about that this afternoon, so I don't have to do much on that. The second part of that, though, is absolutely community. And when you talk about longevity is local, it is about community. And I appreciate so much that through these recent efforts and things, I've got to know more people, got to have our dinners and different things. And it is a theme that I think we need to expand some way. Logan and his kids were here last night. I know I was down here putting up some stuff. You can't believe all the kids that were down here. I mean, yesterday, of course, hello, it's Halloween. But thank goodness Hot Springs has, I guess, come back, and we're a part of downtown that does have some energy and stuff going on. But the community is everything. I mean, you don't live on an island. And I know this very well, being at the farm. I mean, there are days I don't see anybody, I don't talk to anybody, you're working by yourself, and it's no fun. Nor is it life-giving. And I am convinced, I won't hold up my dad's picture again, but I am convinced had he been more social in his final years, he would have made it longer. I think he had run his course. It was fine. But I really believe that he would have kept going. He was a high school teacher, taught up there when Bill Clinton was in Hot Springs High School. But an interesting longevity, he taught the Sunday school class, different churches and different places we live. He taught it for 65 years. Gave him an award and a plaque. So I tell you that because the day that he couldn't read as well is sort of when he quit. And I recognize that as his beginning to seriously fade, if you want to think about that. Also, the other thing you can't miss is caring for family. You can take that out of the Blue Zones, you take it out of umpteen places, but caring for family also adds to longevity. There's not... think of poor Mr. Scrooge out of the movie. I mean, he was very... Just kidding. Okay, so the A, and that goes back to our... what I believe is the focus, if not the first focus. A, you got to have an aim. If you're going to build a health pyramid, if you're going to build some structure, anything... you got to have a plan and you got to have an aim of what you're doing. More than, and I love this quote, a goal without a plan is nothing more than a dream. Okay, a goal without a plan is nothing more than a dream. It is a dream. So, in the health structure, if we can use that phrase, it's critical. And again, you can have multiple things. You can do it one thing at a time. Work on your diet. Work on your cardiovascular. You do different things. I mean, you just can't do 15 things at once. Now, there are obvious overlap. In an earlier part of my life, I was active and enjoyed doing triathlons. And so the cardiovascular you would get from running and then from biking would also carry over to swimming and stuff like that. So, there is, yes, overlap and stuff like that. But the key thing is you've got to have an aim, and I believe it's got to be measurable. It's the old SMART goal scenario. Have it specific, measurable, attainable, SMA, or realistic and time-bound. And again, I'll set up the dominoes and we'll talk about that. The last L, hey, I'm 2 minutes on time. The last L in local, I believe, is also critical, and that is to learn. Okay? Keep your mind active as can be. Alzheimer's runs in my family, unfortunately, but, I'm not going to have it. But the whole thing about being aware and learning, I read something the other day, is that it depends on, the levels of your questions can also help you learn and absorb and stuff like that. Learning is just critical, and it's great. The real thing, the last part of my story here and contribution, I remember I talked to an older guy and I told him, what had happened to me, and I was on my kitchen table. I had run in to get something in my house Friday afternoon, June 28, and then I was going to go to Hot Springs, had to meet a guy just real quickly, left my phone in the truck. I just ran in to get one thing and collapsed on the kitchen floor. So there I am with no phone, nobody's around, and I thought, and my arm doesn't work, and I thought, I can dial on my iPad. So I go over there, get my iPad, and with one hand, I'm trying to hit the microphone and hold it so I can dictate through that. It was just a mess. And so I finally get my girlfriend at the time, and I said, you got to dial 911. I'm really and so she responds back, and she says, are you that bad off? And it's like, I just told you to dial 911. Don't. What are you quizzing me for? So there I am, But my point of learning, as we said earlier, is that I did not learn, cost me, to pay attention to the little signs. Now that is also, and I had this, I wanted to show you the Camino sign again. You remember that. You got to follow the signs. And I had 3 particular episodes where my left arm just tingled a little bit. It was just, I don't know, 15 seconds. You thought, oh, this isn't good, and then it goes away. Okay, ding. So I stand here to preach to myself as well. The learning and understanding is critical, and you just cannot. Or you should not, which is a bad phrase, but you should not ignore those things, obviously. The last thing, and then we want to have a word about more of the water. And I put this in your little packet, and that is a color rendering. I think it came through the Yellow Brick Road. I had a friend who did that. And the point of that is that there is no Yellow Brick Road, okay? There's no wizard. There is no Yellow Brick Road. You're going to have to take dedication. You're going to have to be focused. You're going to have an aim. If you want good health, it takes effort. It takes discipline. It takes, really that learning awareness. And the last thing I would say is something I heard a long, long time ago. The opposite of bravery is not cowardliness. It's conformity. And it's easy to conform when everybody else is sort of going this way, and oh, this is what, but the real bravery is really understanding, being aware, and not conforming. Because trust me, I mean, you'll hear so much from Logan, I know, this afternoon, that we don't understand the junk that's in the food. And it takes effort, it takes awareness, where to source it, where to do it. But I can tell you that I feel better. I know the difference. A lot of it has to do with I'm much more hydrated. And I know we're skipping over some of the high points, but it's just critical. I think it's critical at this juncture to be aware that we have to learn new things about food and diet, okay? And that is the brave thing to do. I do want to, as talking about it being local, introduce you to my dad, okay? We used this at his 90th birthday, okay? He lived to be 93, and I said he was a man's man at 92. He had a girlfriend, okay? And that's another story. But anyway, my mother passed away, and he was about 12 years by himself. And then as he began to fade, I moved back home and was there for a little bit. He did not practice what we would think of as a lot of the same healthy principles we talk about today. However, the hard work, being on the farm, and being here, okay? The real interesting thing that you talk about longevity, his father amazingly lived to be 92 as well, okay? You go back another generation, they had a hard time. They didn't live quite as long. But I'll tell you, I can go back. Amazingly, my great-great-grandfather, born just outside of Mount Ida when they were timber 201 years ago. So you think about how longevity really is local. You want to eat local, go to church here, we got our friends, so it really zeroes into being local. Now, the interesting thing, again, I couldn't help but put this lady's picture up. 106 years old, a tattoo artist, and she is the oldest woman to ever grace the cover of Vogue magazine, okay? It's about having a great life. Now, there's a couple of times in my history, some of this global health care has made a difference in what we were doing. My dad started in the nursing home business a long, long time ago in 1968. So when I tell you about longevity and old people, and this is a little telling, but I have literally been around them for over 50 years, okay? Kids would get in trouble going home from school. My brother and I would get dropped off at the nursing home. So every afternoon, we're running around the nursing home, getting in trouble and stuff like that. And so I thought many times, even as a kid, the folks were interesting in how they dealt with life and how life had sort of treated them. But there's two stories that stand out. I almost brought one because you talk about aging gracefully, which is only a part of what we want to talk about today. But it was interesting that Mrs. Carey was a great baseball fan, and Brooks Robinson, which is from Arkansas, came down there and gave her a baseball. My dad still kept the baseball. So you knew people who were vibrant in life, and even, I can only imagine that they were vibrant earlier in life, not just as they aged. The other second story real quick was, I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, but she was 101, and she had outlived all three of her children that they had passed on in their 70s, okay? And she was a gracious lady and had a stroke, couldn't talk very well, and apparently would still like to put on her own makeup because you could see where it would be a little crooked at the time, but very gracious. I mean, just a lovely person. And so to that point, what I really hope that you'll come away with today and through the talking and different presentations, and again, we can't wait to hear Logan share. I have said to nearly everybody, I said, I don't think you'll meet anybody who knows more about food and packaging and all of that, because at their B&B market,
they private label everything. So it's not somebody else's jam or butter. I mean, so, feel free to really learn and pick his brain, as they say. But I want to share also another story about a tremendous success of a diabetes friend of ours who beat it. And he said to me, he said, really, if you change your thinking as food is utility, it's not something that you got to have pleasure and overeat and do. If you begin to look at how you look at it, it really makes a difference. And so for our health and longevity, it all comes down to a space about that big, which is from your mouth to your brain. We got to watch what we're putting in our mouth, and that is everything. So again, from the cover, I was sharing, there's a couple of several things, 3 goals. We want to have a positive impact on your life today. And it's not about something that you got to work on next week, next month. And also, the most important thing I believe that I have learned so much about, recently is, and as we stated here, accurate and truthful information about foods. And I'm not going to wave around too much, but I do get the Sunday version of a national paper, and there was a big ad that they were doing about certain things, and it appears that they're being helpful in sort of the health arena, although I don't believe that's quite true. So understanding we're lied to, it's not what we think it is, get rid of the process. I mean, we can go on and on, but the bottom line is that please understand there is a real, if you want to say, avenue, a narrow way. It's not the broad way, and that's where the real information is, where you need to get that. So let me just take a minute, and I want to give you an example. Logan sent me a great graphic as well. I couldn't get it reproduced, but if you look at the front page, and it's not hard to guess that the United States spends more per capita. It is the most expensive healthcare system in the world. Okay, but then on the left, on the right, you can see way down there, life expectancy, we are, 20-something, okay? And we spend a good 30%, 35% more. But the most interesting thing to me, and I hadn't looked at this in a while, but that middle little graph that I made, okay, again, trillion. Okay, so 1.4 trillion they spent in 2000. Now it's already up to, in 2020, it's 4.5 trillion. And the 10-year projection is that by 2032, it goes to like 7.7 trillion, okay? And that's unbelievable. I don't think I was talking to Logan, I said, where are we gonna get the money? I guess they'll print it. I mean, it's just unbelievable. If we were getting the value for it, that would be one thing. Now, there's another author that shared the information, about medicine, what we're looking for, and on the second page, I thought, again, thank you, AI, but it came out, how can we reduce the U.S. healthcare costs? Developing a health system that emphasizes prevention rather than disease. Well, that ain't gonna happen, okay?
The United States healthcare industry as an industry ranks so high above all the other industries in the world. It's just unbelievable. So the reason I say that today, and again, our desire to be upbeat and positive, but longevity and healthful living is really important for our country beyond just what it would do for you. Now, my story is, as some of you might follow along, last year I did the Camino, did 320 miles on a hiking, biking, thought I was in great shape, knew I had a few little problems, and then boom, last June, this June, here are my 3 wristbands going into the hospital. So you go from really thinking that you're okay to you're not. And I say from the Camino to the kitchen floor to the hospital to the operating room, then here we are. So that's why I put that here. That really is what drives me today. And there's so many people. I know Logan's story. I mean, when it gets personal, it really does come alive to you, and that's what we're here for. Again, I want to thank you to Sowing Prosperity, Logan, me and McGee Market, and then our Lake Benue Botanicals, and then also, we heard from the Quapaw, and then this afternoon is Living Healthy Farms. John is going to share a little bit too. Let me tell you, the interesting thing to me, Hot Springs, I was born here. I can remember, in fact, pass me my water. Oh, was it this? Thank you. Need a little swallow. Anyway, my earliest memory is coming into Hot Springs to get the water, which now I do as well, because the mineral water, true mineral water, is very healthy. One of the questions I was going to ask Mr. Taylor, they drain the pools here, and it makes such a difference. The other interesting thing I want to interject, and that is the reality of good health today. And I said longevity and Superman, okay? So it is about food. It is about, as I put in the little Camino sign, because for the seashell, which is, the Camino is the longest Christian pilgrimage pretty much in the world. They've done it for about 1,200 years. But their logo or their insignia is a seashell because there's many different roads, okay? But it all comes back to the same spot, okay? So I wanted to make today, as well as a couple other things we're doing, meaningful and beneficial in today's world, in today's life. And you talk about performance, okay? The easiest thing to do in looking at high performance, and these are the 3 books that are very interesting to me. I will not attempt to slaughter his last name, but Mikhail from another country, he wrote the book on flow. And flow is when, and you've experienced this, you're in this working hard, you lose track of time, you're very productive, and it's very, very, productive. From there, that was published in 1990, and then a couple guys later wrote Finding Superman, or The Rise of Superman, and that was in 2014, which then led to Stealing Fire. And so now it gets to be a study about, from Navy SEALs, and Google studies it, and and how could people get to the higher performance, okay? So the most interesting and somewhat simple way to look at this is the most important step of emancipating oneself from social controls is the ability to reward the events in each moment. Being present in what you're doing. If the person learns to enjoy, find meaning in an ongoing stream of experiences in the process of life itself. Okay? Life is just going on. Power returns to the person when rewards are no longer relegated to outside forces, okay? You're really doing something that is beneficial and on purpose for your life, okay? And there's some more here, but again, the easiest way to get this visually, and one of the early stories that they told about is, and you can certainly find this on YouTube, but they look at these extreme guys, that the extreme X Games, however you're going to categorize them. Okay, so 16 years ago, one of the king early guys of skateboarding, Denny, okay, he figures out he's going to jump the Great Wall of China. They build... Have you all seen this or heard this? Okay. They build $1 million ramp for him to jump over this is the Great Wall. Can you see it? Here's the ramp going down, going over, and then he comes up there. Before Red Bull or anything like that. So, I mean, however they got it done. On his first day, his practice run, he falls and fractures his front foot on the skateboard. Okay, doesn't want to go to the doctor, sucks it up, and the next day he's like, I got to do this. Okay, so yes, he gets up there, the first run, flies over there, lands, and performs. To show that it wasn't some, fluke, he goes back, does it a second time, does, the 360 around, lands perfectly, ends up doing it 3 times. So the question is, how does a guy, knowing the fear or recognizing the fear in front of you with a fractured front foot, do it? And that's where you go back to the flow, the thing in life that is unique, interesting, and I think, again, we want to weave in some of the practical things of this as well. In the book, they talk about the Greek word ecstasy, which is focus on the present moment, okay? I know that from my experience of doing the Camino. 17 days was 300 and something miles. Never, ever didn't want to get out of bed. I had never done anything like that before. It certainly was difficult because of the route I took. But it is, again, you're always looking for the signs. So that's the other point I want you to really be aware of. You got to look for the signs. And as soon as I say this, I wasn't paying attention to that in my own health situation. So it's easier said than done. I want to give you a little interesting footnote about myself. I'm probably the very few people, maybe the only person you'll ever meet, who has actually had to put on an oxygen mask in a commercial airline. Ask around stewardesses, people, very rare will you ever bump into somebody who actually had to do that. So the other interesting thing, sort of, is that I have had 5 near-death experiences. Now, I don't mean close calls. I mean near death. And the first one, I was thinking about this. The first one was landing a small little plane at night in the pitch black, which ends up being about 3 miles from where Logan's store is. Went down into pitch. It was only the guardian angel and God above, but it was just, didn't have a scratch on it. We landed in a hayfield. We turned around, took back off. So that's just an interesting thing. And the reason why I say that is I certainly do love and appreciate life, and I want you guys to understand that it's not here to share something that just, maybe it'll be okay, or it's like, hey, we know it works. I know it works, and I can tell you specifically and exactly that I can show you my blood work from a year ago. And then when I went back to the doctor, we drew it again, and in 3 months, actually probably about 2.5 months, everything had gone down. Everything. Changing in diet, okay? That little space from your brain to your mouth, okay? Everything went down. So, this is the challenge that I did on my hike. Then the other thing that's interesting, I want to share 3 success stories really quickly. I know Logan's got a ton of them. He talks to people, helps people all the time. But since we've been active in this, I know of at least a half a dozen, but 3 are very compelling. And I know you talked about diabetes, but I sort of knew this. 1 in 3 adults in the U.S. have prediabetes, and 1 in 10 absolutely have it. So the lady at the top is a new friend of mine. She had a similar story. She knew the pre-diabetes symptoms, had lost both of her parents to strokes, changes her diet, does some exercise. In 2 months, everything was down, and she was in lost weight, did great shape. Paul is a rock star, and maybe there's more stories like his, but 5 years ago, this was taken at the guy in the red coat. He is up in the middle of the night, going to the restroom, was fatigued, diabetes. He goes to the doctor. His A1C is 12.7. Okay, she calls immediately, says you got to get on the meds. He says, okay, I'll take them, but I'm going to get off of them. Okay, he says he's militant. He's very strong about it and takes his diet very seriously. He was on the meds for only 5 weeks. His health improved so much that in the first 30 days back, his A1C goes from 12.7 to 5.7. In the next 3-month visit, it's down to 4.9. And the third month, the third trip, 9 months later, is 5.1. So I like to tell his story. It was 5 weeks. Now it's been 5 years. So he only took the meds for 5 weeks, and now he's been 5 years, no meds. Great. Again, diet. It's everything with diet. And I didn't, 3 months ago, I heard this, I sort of knew it, but it's like, and Logan will tell you so much more about that. But again, you've really got to understand, or I hope today will help you understand the difference between what you think is good food, good diets, versus what is really there, and which is another part that I said in the summary statement, that the true health message is not in any of our medical community. I know that. Okay, so I go get admitted to the hospital. I'm there over the weekend. I go out. I last 1 day. I really didn't do exactly what I'm supposed to do, although I'm asking them. I go back in the hospital. Okay, pre-stroke, have a problem, and so I'm asking them. I'm saying, look, okay, I don't want to come back again. What do I got to do? They can't answer it. Okay, they're about treating things, and you understand that. So, again, food is a utility. It's got function. It's not necessarily for fun. That's Paul's quote, 2001. And then I wanted to share this with you. There is a specific framework. There is a structure that I think will work for most everybody. And it is basically the pyramid, okay? Now, I have made these. I've worked on this. The reason why I say, and I have come up with my health pyramid, that you can use this very simple structure. Now, why do I say the pyramid? The pyramid, undoubtedly, I think is absolutely one of the strongest structures in the world, okay? You want to debate it? Let's go to Egypt and we'll see those guys still standing, 5,000 years later. The reason for that, and I tell you, you talk about those guys, how they did it, I don't know. Because it took me forever to make this out of wood, let alone stone. The reason why they're so strong is the cornerstone goes on both sides. That's the key structure. So in my health pyramid, I imagine 90% of the time, you would have ever seen just one side. You look at a pyramid and you look at something that's just the one side of it, okay? What's critical is that you got to understand the three sides. There are four sides, but there can be. But the three sides, and how this works is that you can name and decide the three aspects of your health pyramid. Then begin to put the blocks together. And that takes a little time and some structure. But what I have done is that I will literally begin to build mine with the blocks. And I think the other great significant element to this is that when you're working on it and you really are working on something and you're carrying around your block, it's real. It's three-dimensional. You're thinking about, hey, this is how it works for me. Now, maybe other people are more disciplined, but that's critical in my experience, and particularly for the long term. Now, I have said this in one other online class. I said, I will virtually guarantee that it will work if you build out the whole structure. Like anything, if you build it out halfway, it's not going to be guaranteed to work. So again, to make this practical, we're going to start next week with a online community class for, again, we like to do Facebook Live either at 5 o'clock and at 7 o'clock, because to make changes in the community, how we work together, sit together, communicate is critical, I believe. And so for lasting change, and we will help start with your health pyramid. So you will find out more about that a little bit later. So I want to just take you back for 1 second, a little bit about our history, looking back at longevity and products. I started growing hemp when all that took off. There's a picture. It's not marijuana, okay. If it was, I wouldn't be standing here. So very difficult, very challenging to grow. As somebody said, it's really almost an art form. It was nothing short of a disaster. Then in 2020, we started with the lavender. I think you've probably seen that before. We've graduated or worked at specifically coming up with inflammation, and that's where I discovered CBG as a great anti-inflammatory. I did that, frankly, as it says, because of my difficulty working on the farm. I mean, I'd been in a desk job, sitting around for umpteen years, and now I'm out there slugging it away every day. I had problems in my knee, and it just wouldn't go away. I was getting shots, tired of that. So I created the formula in 2002 with Daniel. We formed Lake Benue Botanicals, and no more shots. Now, the other thing I'd like to say, and that tries to echo a little bit with what Logan's doing, in growing lavender, I understand what pure is, okay, as this, behind us, because we grew it, harvested, and distilled the oil, and the oil comes out of here directly into the bottle. So I know what pure is. I know what 100% pure is, okay? And that's the critical thing that I begin to uncover in the back of my mind about the foods. It's like, okay, you know what stuff is in there and what's not. Also, I couldn't help resist. I met Logan and his kids in November 2021. I know you really can't see his book. I know I'll talk about that. And then in June 2022, we started the first Lavender Festival. This year will be the 4th annual. And again, we're going to focus very much on what that is for longevity.
My name is Anthony Taylor. I'm an architect. 38 years ago, a former classmate and I had a phone conversation. I was in Memphis, he was in Denver. Neither one of us was satisfied doing a corporate thing. We both wanted a little more familiar small town existence and didn't want to live out our professional lives in a city. So we decided to move to Hot Springs. We established a firm here, began to get a little bit of work, and were baffled by the fact that all but one of these bathhouses was shuttered. The Buckstaff was the only one that was offering any sort of services. Then in 1987, 88, we received a commission to do the Mountain Valley Spring Water headquarters. And at the same time, the Fordyce Visitor Center received federal money. There was a deal made between the City of Hot Springs and the Department of the Interior because Bathhouse Row had been allowed to decline. It was kind of sad. That side of the street had declined. It was very sad. And so there was a deal made. You take care of your side, we'll take care of our side. And so the federal government put money into the bathhouses. They opened the visitor center. The City of Hot Springs did an improvement district, put the utilities underground, the light poles, all that stuff. And things began to percolate a little better. But then still, for years, we watched people come up to the bathhouses and try the doors. You know, the visitors were here, but the services weren't here. So Bob and I got a third partner. There was a request for proposals put out to operate bathhouses. So we went and got some securities law attorneys and put a securities offering together, because the Chamber of Commerce, they were all, oh, woe is us, nothing's ever going to happen until the bathhouses happen. So we put a securities offering together and we went to them, and we sold 1 share. Nobody was willing to put their money in it. They would talk about it all day long, they would wring their hands, they would cry, but they wouldn't open up their wallets. The 1 share we did sell was to a friend who was a physician. He wasn't even a part of the community leaders, so to speak. So we failed to raise the money in the time frame that we had to do so we had to give up that idea. And we went back to doing what we did. They put out another RFP about 2 years later. This time they had gone ahead and spent some money inside. They had removed asbestos. They had put in a kind of basic heat and air system, put a new roof on it. And this time we decided we wouldn't rely on anybody else. We just raised the money ourselves with a bank loan and with a syndication of historic rehab tax credits. And there were, instead of the 20-some odd partners it would have taken to do the securities offering, there were only 3 of us. And we put in a total of about $5 million with tax credit equity and loans, and designed this, built it, opened the doors, and there's been a line out the door ever since. And that was 16 years ago. So the idea here, and this bathhouse particularly was built as one for every man, for the common people. It was low cost. It was segregated men's and women's, but it was low cost and available to people, whereas in the day the Fordyce was the high-end spa and was very expensive. This one was not. So we used that as a theme and made these open pools and made it, and when we opened, I think it was $15 a person for as long, or $12 a person for as long as you wanted to stay. Knowing full well that you can't stay in 105-degree water very long. But people do get in the water, get out and rest, get back in the water and do a full regimen. So, you know, it's been very fulfilling to watch people actually enjoy the thing that made Hot Springs what it is. So we've learned a whole lot over the past 16 years about water quality, water, the cleanliness of water. I mean, that's the most important thing about it, is being able to keep the water safe for people and clean. And so we take very strong measures to make sure we have a residual chemical in the water. We put in the tiniest amount that we can. We test it regularly, and those tests are given to the National Park Service. And it's been a real ride, because we had no idea there was such a demand, and there is a huge demand. In the meantime now, in the past 16 years, we have a brewery, we have a hotel, a bed and breakfast type hotel, we have a cultural center, we have a gift shop, and we still have the buck staff. So every bathhouse except for the Maurice is occupied. The Maurice will be soon out for proposals, and we really hope that it complements the rest of this with some sort of a health, a use that amplifies the healthy properties of what's going on here with the water. So it's been an experience that I'm really glad that we had that phone call 38 years ago, because my professional life has been spent here in Hot Springs, in a beautiful place with a very nice lifestyle and very conducive to a peaceful existence, which is pretty well what's available here.
To the city.
Several things, and it was what was happening with the country at the time. They built a mall on 7 South, which was way outside of it was not developed between here and there at the time, and which is empty, exactly, which is empty now, and downtown is packed. So what happened, there was wide open illegal casino gambling in Hot Springs, off and on since the late 1800s, up until, as they said, we elected a governor, Winthrop Rockefeller, who didn't need the bribes. And he shut down the gambling houses. They made a big deal out of it. They took all the slot machines and roulette tables out near the fairgrounds and put them in a pile and doused them with kerosene and burned them. Then the auction houses came along, and they were basically fleecing operations. They would have a plant in the audience, and they would put up some fairly worthless stuff, and this plant would bid it up until some sucker in the audience and then that was over, and the sucker had the worthless stuff for way too much money. So at that time, the other thing that happened was World War II and the development of penicillin. People flooded these bathhouses for health reasons, and then penicillin came along, and the properties of the baths were not something you could, the healthful medicinal purposes of the bath were not something you could really prove, and they couldn't compete with penicillin. Excuse me?
The medicinal properties.
Exactly, and that's what we've discovered. I mean, we have 4 different pools at 4 different temperatures, and it's very much based on a hydrotherapy regime, where you can go, you get heated up, then you go and cool down a little bit. You go and take a cooler. I mean, you just go from different temperatures and ranges. It's good for your heart. It's good for your respiration, and the minerals that are in the water that absorb through your skin, particularly the magnesium and things like that are in there, are very healthy. So yeah, we have people. I come a lot on Sunday mornings. Sometimes English is the third language I hear. We have a lot of Asians. We have a lot of Eastern Europeans, where bathing is a real part of their society and their social customs. We used to have busloads of Russians from Chicago. A tour operator up there would get a busload, come down here. We would sell them a week-long discounted pass, and they would come in every day for 4 hours or so, enjoying all this. We had to cut that out because too many other people were willing to come in and pay full price. But we still maintain it as a relatively inexpensive thing, and along with that, we've been able to develop the spa services, which they range from mud packs to Swedish massages to hot stones and deep tissue. We have a full range of services, and they're packed. If you don't have an appointment for tomorrow, you can't get one. It's that much in demand. So we're very pleased with how things have turned out, and we're just trying to hold on and maintain it. We shut down the 1st of January until the Friday of MLK weekend and do a deep clean. It's an old building. You'll see that some of the plaster is bubbling up because water gets in. I mean, it's very difficult to maintain the building and to keep the moisture out of the walls. So for 10 days, the 1st of January, we're in here all hands on deck doing a very deep clean so we can sail through the next year. Yeah. Well, we're happy y'all are here. We like what Dennis is putting together here, and we want to see where this can go.
Hey, listen, thanks so much for everybody coming today, and we appreciate so much your enthusiasm to answer the other question about doing another one. We're going to look at probably April, and I know March is a busy time with the spring breaks and stuff, but April, I'm sure, will be a good time. We'll be right back here in Hot Springs. If you have questions, you can certainly email us. You can contact us on Facebook for Logan Prosperity Place, Sowing Prosperity. Hello. And me and McGee. Also, you can contact Logan through those channel medias, and then also Live Healthy Farms. We're going to look for a few more folks to join us for next time. And again, thank you for your time. We hope you will like this, share it, and send out some more information. Thank you.